Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. So today I'm going to continue on with part 2 of my January book haul. If you missed part 1, I will have it linked down below in the description box for you, so you can go back and watch that before you watch this one. So in this section of the haul, I believe I have about 43 books. I'm not going to talk about them all extensively. I am going to review the synopses of the newer ones that I got, but I also have some series in here, so I'm not going to describe each and every single one of them. I'll just show you the book. And besides that, I also have some vintage horror paperbacks that we're going to add to the collection. So the first book that I have is Scream All Night by Derek Milman, and this follows a young man named Dario, and his father is actually a director of B-rated horror films, and he works out of Moldavia Studios, which is an iconic castle that became the home and the set for all of these B-rated movies. And Dario and his father do not get along. He doesn't want to have anything to do with his dad's directing career, and he eventually gets emancipated and moves away. Years later though, Dario's brother invites him back because they are going to celebrate one of his father's biggest movies, and Dario is convinced that this is going to be his one and only trip home. But when he gets back there, he ends up getting back into the twisty-turny world of Moldavia Studios and his father's twisted B-film horror. So to me, I'm really getting Night Film vibes from this. I personally did not like the book Night Film. It was actually on my worst books that I read in 2020 list. So I'm a bit apprehensive about this one, but I'm really hoping that even though they're both kind of along the same lines, that this one turns out to be much, much better. So next up we have Watch Hollow by Gregory Funaro. So this follows a set of siblings named Lucy and Oliver who come to live at an old mansion named Blackford House after their father gets offered a job that he can't refuse. So their father gets offered a great deal of money to be able to fix the clock in the house, but Lucy and Oliver realize after some time that there's something wrong with the house, there's something wrong with the clock, and there seems to be a sinister beast involved. So again, here we have another sort of cozy middle grade book. It's fairly short and the font is fairly big. So this one I think will be a nice cozy little fun adventure after reading some sort of sinister adult horror. And next up I wanted to talk about a couple of books that I actually just received in the mail from the author. So I spoke about this book, Ghost Road by Charis Cotter, in part 1 of this haul, and the autographed copy that I ordered has arrived, and it says, "For Lizzie, take a walk down the Ghost Road." So super excited to have a personalized copy, and I actually ordered a couple of other books from the same author and had her autograph those as well before she shipped them. So all of these are Newfoundland ghost stories. Like I said before, Newfoundland is a very small province on the eastern coast of Canada, and that's where I'm from, and it's very, very rich in storytelling, especially ghost stories. So I have 2 collections here that are actually ghost stories that are compiled by children. I'm sure some of them are true and some of them are probably made up, but I also got those personalized. So this one is The Ghost of Baccaliu, and it is by the children of Tricon Elementary. And it says, "For Lizzie, I hope you enjoy these spooky treasures." And the other one here is The Ghosts of Southwest Arm. And these are little tiny, tiny communities on the island. And this one says, "For Lizzie, who knows that Newfoundland is the most haunted place in the world." And then the last story collection that I got is Screech, Ghost Stories from Old Newfoundland. So this is a collection, I believe, of more well-known ghost stories and fables from Newfoundland. And it says on the inside, "For Lizzie, who loves Newfoundland ghost stories." And if you're wondering what Screech is a Newfoundland rum, and it is so called because that's the noise you make when you drink it. So I'm super happy to have these as part of the collection, and it was really nice of the author to put some personalized messages inside these, and I'm going to treasure them for a really, really long time. So next up we have Home for the Haunting by Juliet Blackwell, and here we follow Mel, who is a contractor who is doing a voluntary renovation on a home, and she finds out that the house next door is haunted and the local kids call it the murder house. And it says here on the back, when volunteers discover a body while cleaning out a shed, questions pile up faster than discarded lumber. Mel notices signs of ghostly activity next door, and she wonders, are the murder house ghosts reaching out to her for help? Or has the house claimed another victim? So of course this goes right in with my love of haunted houses. This is just a tiny little book, so I think this one will be pretty quick to get through. Then we have How to Survive a Horror Movie by Seth Grahame-Smith, and this is not so much like a novel or anything, but it has little tidbits and quizzes and stuff about, you know, tropes in horror movies and how you would be, you know, the final girl or the final person standing after everyone is dead. So this just seems like such a fun little thing to read, and, you know, you have chapters in here on things like inanimate objects, man-made instruments of death, and of course it has a picture of Annabelle, the movie version of Annabelle, that is. And yeah, it just seems like it's really, really super fun. So again, just a nice little palette cleanser, and of course has to do with horror movies, so can't get much better than that. So next up we have The Shadows by Alex North, and just the cover alone really reminds me of Stand By Me, the 80s movie. So the cover art was the first thing that drew me into buying this book, but it also has an interesting synopsis as well. So this follows Paul Adams, who is trying to put his life back together after a gruesome murder happened in his hometown 25 years previous. And Adam knew both the murderer and the victim. So 25 years later, he's living away, but his mother is starting to get really ill, and he has to go back to his hometown to help her. So soon after he gets home, he learns that there is a copycat killer, or what they think is a copycat killer, in the next town, but it leaves Adam wondering, is it really a copycat, or is it the original killer who was never seen afterwards? And on top of that, his mother is claiming that there is someone in the house, and Adam himself is feeling like he's being followed. So nice little murder story here, and I have heard some good things about this on BookTube, so we'll see what I think. Next we have Horrorstor by Grady Hendrix, and like I said before, I just finished My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix, and I really loved the story. I really loved his writing style, so I was excited to pick this one up and continue reading more of his works. So just the format of this book is really cool because it's almost like an IKEA catalog, and the story itself is about a haunted store that's very much like an IKEA, and when the employees come in the morning, they find broken things and things are moved around and all of that. So they decide that they're going to lock themselves in the store for an overnight period and see what's going on. So a haunted IKEA with a bunch of people locked in, I think that's a really cool concept and have high hopes for this one. So next is the Merciless by Danielle Vega, and I've had this one on my radar for a while. This is not a new book whatsoever, but I never ever picked it up. So this is The Exorcist meets Mean Girls from what I hear, and it's about a group of friends, and one of the girls turns out to be possessed, and they try to do an exorcism on her. So from what I hear, this is quite brutal, but I've heard some good things, so excited to get into this one. So I have the first and second books, and I actually have book 3 and book 4 on the way. So hopefully this is a good series because I did invest in buying all 4 books, so high hopes for this one. So next up is The Furies by Katie Lowe, and this goes right into my love of dark academia and boarding schools and the whole thing. So here we have an all-girls boarding school, and the school itself actually revolves around a lot of Greek and Roman mythology, and its founder had an academic interest in the 17th century witch trials. But when a group of girls starts delving into the school's history, they're wondering if magic is real and if it was just academic study or if these myths and the magic and everything are actually real. So like I said, goes right up my alley with the dark academia. So excited for this one. I did order it in December, and then I heard some kind of mediocre reviews come out about it, but I'm gonna decide for myself and we'll see how it goes. So next up is The Good House by Tananarive, and I'm excited to have a copy of this one. They're quite expensive on Amazon Canada anyway. They're quite expensive, but I did find a cheap paperback copy on Book Outlet. Excited to have this one as part of the collection. It's a YouTube favorite. I have heard so many good things about this book. So this is another classic haunted house story, and it follows Angela, who lives in what used to be her grandmother's house, and it's called The Good House. So after Angela's son commits suicide in the house, she does move away, but then she comes back and she tries to unravel what actually happened to her son and if it has anything to do with the house itself. So excited to have this one. I'm hoping it lives up to all of my expectations. Like I said, this was on so many people's favorite books lists, and so excited to read it. The only thing that I'm a little concerned about is the font is quite small, and I absolutely hate that, but we'll give it a try anyway. Hopefully, like I said, it lives up to all the hype. So next we have Ghost Radio by Leopoldo Gout, and this centers around a call-in radio show that has to do with everything spooky. So people tell stories of ghosts and poltergeists and demons and aliens and all of that sort of thing. And the show itself is run by a man named Joaquin and his really small crew. But they do get an opportunity to have the show syndicated, and he is so excited to have the show go to the big time. And it says on the back here, when Joaquin starts noticing a curious and troubling phenomena drifting onto his broadcasts, he is inexplicably drawn further and further into the terrifying stories he solicits on the radio. As he slowly loses control over his reality and finds himself unable to distinguish between the real world and the world populated by the nightmares on Ghost Radio, he is forced to confront his past and his own mortality in order to repair the crumbling wall between the living and the dead. So, sounds like a guy that's slowly kind of descending into madness. I'm really excited for this one. So next I have a couple of anthologies. So first is Echoes, and this is edited by Ellen Datlow, and it says The Saga Anthology of Ghost Stories, and this is a massive book. And this seems to be a really big collection of ghost stories by well-known authors. So we have Shauna Maguire and Paul Tremblay have stories in here, as well as about, I think, 20 or 21 other authors. So yeah, pretty self-explanatory. Really excited to have all of these ghost stories to make my way through. I love anthologies. I've mentioned it before on the channel. I find it's a great way to get out of a reading slump when you can kind of sit down and read one story at a time and you don't have to consume an entire novel. So the next one that I have is The Big Book of Jack the Ripper, and Jack the Ripper is definitely something that I have studied in the past and I absolutely love it. And it seems like this is a collection of short stories as well, obviously, that all have to do with Jack the Ripper. And it says on the front here, the most complete compendium of Ripper stories ever assembled. So another big chunker of a book, and this one is actually kind of done in the format like of an encyclopedia almost. So really looking forward to that and putting that one in the collection. And the last short story collection that I have is Growing Things and Other Stories by Paul Tremblay. This is another YouTube favorite. I've heard great things about this one, and Paul Tremblay is just such an amazing author, so excited to have this one as part of the collection as well. And of course it wouldn't be a book haul for me without some R L Stine. So we have The Haunting Hour, Chills in the Dead of Night. So this is a really nice little short story collection, very, very small. And like I said in the first part, the show The Haunting Hour was based on all of these short stories that he had written. And like I said in part one, it was these stories that actually inspired The Haunting Hour show, which I absolutely love. So maybe what I'll do is I'll read these quickly and then rewatch the whole show. So excited to have this one to go along with the other little collection that I got. And then of course we have some Fear Street. So I have some of the newer Fear Street novels. These are not the vintage ones. So we have Return to Fear Street, You May Now Kill the Bride, and it says, two sisters divided by time, each with a terrible resentment she can barely contain. And then we have Return to Fear Street, The Wrong Girl, and it says, Poppy Miller swears she will get payback for Jack Saber's cruel prank that humiliated her in front of all of her friends. And then we have a Fear Street Saga. So this is a bind up, and it's called Betrayal. And this is a bind up of The Betrayal, The Secret, and The Burning. And I do have a couple of these in the vintage copies, but I was happy to have this kind of full collection so I could read it all at once and use this as a reading copy. And this is kind of like a prequel, and it explains why the house on Fear Street is the way it is, why it's haunted, why the place is so creepy. So this sounds like it's really good, and I think this would be a good place to start before I start rereading all of the Fear Street from my childhood. So happy to have that one. And then moving on to some Christopher Pike. So I find the Christopher Pike novels are actually a lot harder to find than the vintage Fear Street, so I was really excited to find these copies. Unfortunately, the ones that I found were not in the best condition, but I'll keep these as readers' copies, and then once I find some really nice first editions, I can just set those aside in the collection and kind of, you know, not ruin them any more than they already are. So first we have some Spooksville. So we have Spooksville number 3, The Dark Cave, number 5, The Cold People, and number 7, The Dark Corner. And then besides the Spooksville, I actually did find some of the YA novels, like I said, not in great condition, but just happy to have these to reread them at this point. I'm really hoping that they give me all the nostalgia and I love them just as much as I did when I was a kid. And the first one is Witch. And I have spoken about this book on this channel before, so this was the book that really kickstarted my love of horror and everything spooky. So I had already read a lot of the Goosebumps novels, and I was starting to watch spooky things on TV, and I was getting really interested in ghost stories and stuff. But it wasn't until I read this book that was really the catalyst, and then I absolutely fell in love. And funny enough, when I was in grade 5, so I think I would have been, what, 10 or 11, I found Christopher Pike's Witch at a book fair that they were having at my school. And how this ended up in an elementary school book fair, I have no idea. I think it was probably fate. And I picked it up and I read it that year, and that was it. I was the spooky kid. So love this book. I am so excited to reread this. This is going to be coming up on my February TBR for sure. And then I also found 8 more vintage copies. So we have Fall into Darkness, Monster, Spellbound, Master of Murder, Whisper of Death, See You Later, Eternal Enemy, and Remember Me. So super excited to have those to add to the vintage paperback collection. As much R L Stine as I have, and as much as I love him, it is Christopher Pike that was my absolute favorite author when I was a kid, and I remember having such fond memories when I used to go pick up one of those books. So I do plan on reading all of these. Like I said, these are reading copies. They're not something that I have to keep, you know, in perfect condition. So totally excited to have those as part of the vintage collection. Like I said, these are just reading copies, and I'm just so happy to have them, and I just hope that all of the nostalgia comes back from my childhood and I love them just as much now as I did then. And here we are at the last part of the haul. So I have 9 more books here, but they are all part of a series, and that is the Last Apprentice series by Joseph Delaney. And I read these books back when they first came out. I think I read the first 10 or 11, and then I had gone into my decade-long reading slump, so I actually didn't get to finish the series. And these books are so adventurous and so cute. So these are a middle grade kind of spooky type, I don't know if I would call it a horror, but more like a dark adventure or dark fantasy. And this follows Tom Ward, who is a 7th son of a 7th son, and he is recruited to become the apprentice of the local spook. And the spook is a man who travels around the county, and he rids the county of denizens of the dark. So he fights witches and warlocks and ghosts and demons and all kinds of things. And even though this is a middle grade book and, you know, they're pretty tame, in some parts it can be pretty gruesome, it can be pretty harrowing. But I'm excited to get back into this series and actually finish it now that all of the books are complete and I'm out of my reading slump. So I have 9 of these back in the collection so far. So we have number 1, The Revenge of the Witch, number 2, The Curse of the Bane, number 3, Night of the Soul Stealer, number 4, Attack of the Fiend, number 7, Rise of the Huntress, number 8, Rage of the Fallen, and number 10, Lure of the Dead. So those were in the original Last Apprentice series, and just so you know, they did try to make a movie out of this and it was a total flop. Don't watch the movie, it was horrible, but the books are really, really good. So the last 2 that I have are A New Darkness and The Dark Assassin, which is kind of a spin-off series to the originals, and I haven't read any of these ones yet, so excited to have these in. So once I get through the original series again and refresh myself, then I can get into these. So that's it, guys. That is part 2 of my January book haul. I am so happy to have all of these as part of the collection, and all of the Christopher Pike makes me so happy and just really excited to start reading those again. So thank you everyone for joining me today. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure to give me a thumbs up and leave me a comment down below, because you guys know that I love chatting with you. Let me know if there's any of these that you want to put on your own TBR, or if there's ones that you already read and you want to chat about them. But until next time, guys, stay spooky. Bye.